So next, we're going to start our panel. Each panel will have 5 to 6 minutes to answer the question and also share what does this "we are all Americans" means to them. Let's start with Nancy Tung. Nancy Tung is a Deputy California Attorney General, and she's a trial prosecutor and a former Deputy California Attorney General. So Nancy, the question for you is, when Asian hate crime and gun violence continue to rise, we know that all the communities of color suffer when the root causes of violence remain unaddressed. So what the legislators can do for the systemic change? Thank you.
Well, thank you for that question, Diana. Good evening, everyone. My name is Nancy Tung, and I'm so honored to be here tonight. So first, I'd like to say what it means to be an American, as each of the panelists will do tonight as well. My parents, like many others here, immigrated to the United States to build a better life for their children. They had 4 children. We grew up in the South and then eventually immigrated to California. So one of my first memories of what it meant to be an American was when my father took his American passport out and said that when he went back to Taiwan the next week, he would proudly hold his passport in front of him as he marched in a democracy march in a foreign country. His American passport meant that he had freedom to speak, not just in America, but also in another country, the country of his birth. That which he could not do before he was an American. And for me personally, it means something a little bit different because I was born here, and in my chosen profession, I've been a career prosecutor, defending the Constitution of the United States and the state of California for the last 22 years. But there was a moment in court where somebody questioned whether or not I was an American. When I was in a courtroom arraigning a man who had been stalking several dozen people, making them afraid for their lives, making them fearful for their safety and the safety of their family, he turned to me and said, "Why don't you go back to your own country?" And if you are an immigrant and it shows that your national origin is not European on your face, you may have been subjected to something like this before in your lifetime. And I will say that being an American, to me, means defending the principles of our Constitution, the principles of freedom, and the principles of what is right and just, no matter what other people might say to you. It is a pledge that I've taken as a prosecutor. It is a pledge that I live every day in the way that I conduct myself. And so to be an American means to stand up for freedom. Now, with respect to Asian hate crimes and gun violence, I think that when we look at the way that hate crimes are described in the legislation, in the penal code, we really need to take a look at what it means and what we're actually trying to address. We're not really talking about necessarily hate crimes, but really racially motivated crimes. Because a person might be selected because of their race to be a target of crime, but not necessarily because of hate, but because of certain stereotypes that maybe in the Asian community, people think that you carry a lot of money, or that you won't fight back, or that you're weak, or that because you don't speak the language, it's not your native tongue, that you may not make a police report. So in this regard, I think that we need to strengthen the legislation on the state level to change the definition of a hate crime, to make it more clear that we're talking about racially motivated crimes, and to address that issue. In terms of gun violence, which affects all communities, We need to make sure that we address the root issues of violence by supporting violence intervention programs at the state level, that we strengthen our gun laws nationally, and that when we talk about the root issues around violence and crime, that we are really supporting our educational system. Because if you don't provide education on the same level for all communities, then we can only expect to see more violence and more crime in the future. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Wonderful.